Hey, what is up you guys, it's Case8 here, and today I'm going to show you guys how to make this awesome Ableton rack, which is pretty much what I consider to be a MIDI transformer of sorts. So what it does with, just by turning a couple macros, you can change your key, your scale, your chords, or octaves. So it's just a big mapping of a bunch of MIDI plugins inside of a rack. So I'll show you guys how I put it all together, and after that we'll mess around with it. But I should say that this thing is not a magical wand. It's not going to write music for you or anything, but it's a great way to see different possibilities and explore maybe different aspects of music theory by showing you guys the difference of scales and chords and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully you guys will like this, so let's get started. So let's get straight into this one. So this is the Ableton rack that I was talking about, and if we look at it, if we just scroll, it's pretty huge, but it's quite simple in the way that it works. So right here we have all these scale devices, and you notice that they're all the device on and offs are mapped, and as well as the bass, so that's actually going to represent how we change our key. And before that we have some chords, so it's pretty important that the chords go before the scales, so that way that when we change our chords it fits in our scale. So that's pretty much a no-brainer there. You don't want to have your chords after your scales. And we can see that all the devices are mapped as well. And then we have some octave, basically some pitch tools here to change the octave. So right here we just have 4 simple macros that can transform any piece of MIDI into really awesome different possibilities. So if we look at the chord device, right now we're on a major chord. We can also just switch that to fit to a fourth, a house, whatever. And with the chord devices, I do something interesting here. At the end, I have one that has no setting, so it's basically an off setting. So when I switch it all the way down, so when I have this all the way down, this one will be on, and we will be playing no chord. So sometimes that's useful if you're playing a melody or you already have a chord progression you like, but just want to change the scales and everything else, then you have an off setting for that. So sometimes I recommend integrating an offsetting. And I have something similar with the pitch tools here. So when we go octave, 49 basically represents off. So you can see that this is doing no pitch changes. So this is my offsetting here. So this is an important part of the rack as well. And I will show you guys how to make this all from scratch. I'll make a new one in a sec. I just want to kind of explain some things beforehand. So you can see here as I change this, we can transpose our MIDI 2 octaves higher, or an octave higher, or an octave down, depending on where this is at. So it's just clever mapping, really. So let's put it right there at off position, and let's close some of these down, because honestly we don't need to look at our pitch tools or our chords. I like to have open. I don't ever really need to see the scale devices. So usually I'll have these open, and that's the only thing I'll have any interest of looking at. But we'll close those down so that you can see some of these scale devices. So the scale devices have 2 things mapped to it. So it's actually 2 macros here. So it's the scale device, so we can change from different scales, and then the key device. So if I have something in the key of F, or my MIDI is in the key of F, but I want to hear in the key of A, I can just switch it to A, and then the scale device will adapt that. And then you can see I have things like major, minor, gypsy, Hungarian, Ukrainian scale, and I can just switch between all of those. So again, it's just map and setting ranges for each of these when we turn the parameters. So there's no limit to how many of these you can have. Like with my chords, I have I think 5 chord devices, and then my off one, so that's 6. But as you can see, when we go MIDI effects and we scroll this down, we have a lot more than that. And then of course you can make your own chords. So you could have like 50 chord devices if you wanted, but that might be too much, too many options. But we can have a bunch of scale devices as well. So you can see there's all sorts of different scales. So I think I limited myself to like around 7 or so. So just the scales that I probably use the most. So there's no limit to how many you can have. Just note that depending on how many you have, you'll have to do some different math. So very basic math when we're making this. So if we open up the mapping, you can see basically what's going on. So we don't overlap any values, so that way we don't have 2 devices on at once, and coloring this helps a lot. So now let's just make a new one so some of this all makes sense on how this is made. And let's do that. So let's delete this. And I just realized how long this is going to probably take. So first thing I like to start off with is the pitch tools, because to me those kind of go first. So we're going to just drag in 4 of these, why not? And we'll drag in an empty one as well. So let's just go ahead and group these all. So this is a MIDI device, so you can just throw this on any old MIDI track. You don't need to have anything on it. And let's open up the macros. So now let's click on map, and we're going to select all the device on and offs, and we're going to map it to a macro. So I'm just going to set it to macro 1, all of these, so device on and off, set it to that. And because of MIDI, we have a range of 0 to 127. So the way we don't have these overlap is by giving them each a range. So the first one I know I can have at 0, and if you do some basic math, like I have 4 of these devices. So if I divide 4 by 127, it should be around a range of like 30-ish. So I will set this first one to 30. And it's really important that I don't set this to 30 as well. So the reason that is if these both have a range of 30, or they both start or end on 30, that means they're both on at the same time. So if I set this to 30 here, we'll actually see that these are both on, and that's not really what we want. So we have to make sure that they don't overlap. So if I set this one to 31, we're basically okay. So now we can see that if I'm on 30, only one of these is on. So that's really important for mapping. Sometimes that's what you want, sometimes that's not what you want. So let's set this to 61, and then we'll set this one to 62, to 92, and then we'll set this 93 to that. So it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, I don't have to divide these evenly or anything. It's not like Ableton's gonna have a problem with that. But it's just good to divide it so that way when you turn the device, it's pretty easy to see which ones are on and off, and the macro turning feels kind of even. So I don't know if some people have these kind of these knobs mapped to their keyboard, so it feels better when the values are a little bit more even between the device switching. So as you can see, that's how it works, and that's basically what we're going to do with all the other ones as well. So I might fast forward through some of those other ones or just not do as many. So let's do the chord ones next. So I always recommend having a major chord, a fifth, maybe another fourth. And then, like I said earlier, it's really important to also have a chord device that represents your off. So this one would be my off chord. So actually I might want to put this one first. And let's just grab another one that I like, house to go. House 4 to go. So how many we have here? We have, I'm gonna put this one ahead. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now when we map these, we're gonna do the same process. And I actually like to color the buttons, so that way it's pretty obvious when we're looking at the mapping section what each thing is. So let's now do this kind of same process. So we're just gonna select all the chord devices on and offs, and we're just gonna map it all to the same macro. So we'll put these on macro 2. And we'll color it so that it's easy to kind of see what, to tell the difference between these two. And now we just have to do some more basic math. Okay, so we have 5 of these, so we're gonna have to do some math again. So 5 divided by 127, that should be around 25, I'm gonna guess. It doesn't have to be exact numbers, like I said. So we're gonna have this from 0 to 25. And then we'll do 26. So again, making sure we don't have overlapping values. So 26 to, I guess that'd be 51. And then 52 to 77, I think. Not really great at math when I'm kind of multitasking. So we'll do 78. So I think that's about right. And like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect math, because all that matters is just that the devices switch properly. So as you can see, when we turn that off, we can see that it switches. So we don't see this one light up because it has nothing to light up, because that's our off position. So that's the one that we have, that's basically our off. So when it's there, from 0 to 25, it's off, and then it goes into the other 4. So like I was saying, if you want to throw in more chords, you're just gonna have to do the math accordingly. So if I have 17 chord devices I want to map to one thing, and that they switch only playing one at a time, you're gonna have to divide 17 by 127, and then just do the math going like this, so making sure they don't overlap. So that's basically the whole thing there. And so then you just repeat this whole process again with scales. But it's a little different there because we're gonna map 2 things there. So we're gonna bring in some scales. So we're gonna bring in a major, a minor, just some typical ones, and a half diminished scale. And you know, I'll leave it at 3 because we need to have that many. So when you get to the scale devices now, what you do, let's color this beforehand. Let's actually change that color. What you do is you're gonna also map the bass here. So we're gonna map these all to the same macro, so that way we can change all the scales key at the same time, as opposed to having different ones. Like if we have this scale go up to a different key, then we switch this one, which is in a different key, it's not really what we want. So we're gonna map these all to the same one. So let's map all of these. So map to this. We're just selecting all the basses here, putting it on 3, and we don't need to do anything now. So this is pretty great because they're all gonna change to be the same thing at the same time. So we don't have to change anything there. So that's the easiest one to map. Now let's map the device on and offs to 4. So there's 3 of them here, so that should be 3 divided by 127. That should be like 40-ish. So we're gonna set that to 40, and let's add some color to this. So let's go 0 to 40. So that's pretty much how you make it. So now let's just play around with it so that you can get a good idea of how this works. When you're using this rack here with a kind of chord progression, you might want to stay away from the chord devices, just because it's not going to, if I have a chord device on, it's going to play that chord on every single note that's playing, so it's just going to be a really messy thing to hear. So sometimes the best way to play around the chords is just on the root notes. So basically I would just mute all the extra notes and just listen to the different chords just by having the root note. So the root note just means our beginning note that represents what scale we're in. So I'm gonna have it off because I want to actually hear my chords, the ones I've written, and what I'm gonna use this for is just to change the key, the scale, and the octaves, so that way I can get some different ideas going. So let's just listen to this now. So hopefully you guys like this, and thanks guys for watching, and of course, late.